In South Africa, a community got tired of waiting for the government, so they picked up tools and built their own bridge to reach a medical clinic. No contractor. No municipal budget. No ribbon-cutting ceremony with politicians in suits. Just ordinary people, solving an extraordinary problem with their own hands. This is the story the mainstream media buried under celebrity gossip and stock market updates. But this story matters because it tells you everything about where Africa is, where it has been, and exactly where it is going. Stay with me, because by the end of this video, you will see this not as a story of failure but as one of the most powerful displays of African self-determination in 2026. Let us start with context, because without context, this is just a feel-good story. And it is so much more than that. South Africa is the most industrialized economy on the African continent. It has the largest stock exchange in Africa. It has world-class hospitals in Cape Town and Johannesburg. It hosted the FIFA World Cup. It produced Nelson Mandela. And yet in July 2026 a rural community had to build their own bridge just to reach a clinic. How do we square that circle? How does a country with a GDP of over $400 billion have villages cut off from basic healthcare because there is no bridge over a river? The answer lives in history. Under apartheid, which formally ended in 1994, the spatial planning of South Africa was designed deliberately to concentrate infrastructure, roads, hospitals, schools, and economic opportunity in white urban areas. Black and colored communities were pushed into homelands, Bantustans, and rural peripheries. The infrastructure gap was not an accident. It was policy. 32 years after the end of apartheid, that infrastructure deficit has not been closed. According to the South African Human Sciences Research Council, over 18 million South Africans still lack adequate access to healthcare services, and geographic isolation is one of the top 3 barriers. Rivers, broken roads, and missing bridges are not minor inconveniences. They are life and death. In 2023, a report by Stat.SA showed that rural municipalities in the Eastern Cape, Limpopo, and KwaZulu-Natal consistently rank at the bottom of service delivery indices. These are not new problems. These communities have been filing complaints, submitting petitions, and attending Imbizo's community meetings for decades. So when a group of villagers in 2026 finally said, "Enough, we are building this ourselves," that decision did not happen in a vacuum. It happened after years, possibly generations, of being ignored. Now let us talk about what actually happened, the current situation. According to reporting from All Africa in July 2026, villagers in a rural South African community took it upon themselves to construct a bridge that would connect their settlement to a nearby medical clinic. The river crossing had made it nearly impossible, especially during rainy season when waters rise, for elderly residents, pregnant women, and children to reach medical care. Think about that for 1 second. A pregnant woman trying to cross a flooded river to reach a clinic. In 2026, the community reportedly pooled resources, materials, labor, and local engineering knowledge to make this crossing a reality. No formal contractor was hired. No environmental impact assessment was fast-tracked. Real people used real skills to solve a real problem that their government had refused to address. Now here is where the analysis gets important. The South African government has been battling a catastrophic service delivery crisis for the better part of 15 years. Load shedding, water shortages, crumbling roads, these are symptoms of a deeper disease, corruption, mismanagement, and a municipal financing model that has essentially collapsed in many rural areas. The South African Auditor General's 2024 to 2025 report found that over 60% of municipalities in South Africa received either qualified, adverse, or disclaimer audit opinions, meaning their finances are in such disorder that auditors could not even properly assess them. Money that should be building bridges is disappearing into tender fraud and political patronage networks. So the villagers did not just build a bridge. They issued a verdict on their government. Like this video help more Africans see this story. Every like puts this in front of someone who needs to understand what is really happening on this continent. Now let us talk about the key players and stakeholders in this story, because understanding who has power and who is exercising it tells us everything. First, the community themselves. These are the heroes of this story, full stop. They demonstrated what scholars call social capital, the ability of a community to organize, mobilize resources, and execute collective action without waiting for external authority. This is not primitive. This is sophisticated. It is the same instinct that built the pyramids, that sustained African societies for millennia before colonialism disrupted communal governance systems. Second, local government. The relevant ward councillor and local municipality have a direct constitutional obligation under Section 152 of the South African Constitution to provide basic services and infrastructure. The fact that residents build this bridge themselves is a constitutional indictment. It is evidence of dereliction of duty. Third, civil society and media. Stories like this one gain traction because organizations and platforms including All Africa, community radio stations, and social media amplify them. But the question is always, does amplification lead to accountability, or does it lead to a news cycle that fades in 72 hours while the same community still crosses the same river? Fourth, and this is the stakeholder most people overlook, the private sector and diaspora networks. There are South African engineers, architects, and construction professionals living in Johannesburg, London, Toronto, and Dubai. There are diaspora remittances flowing back into rural communities. The question is whether these resources can be better channeled into exactly these kinds of infrastructure gaps. Subscribe for honest, Pan-African analysis you will not find on CNN or BBC. We cover these stories because they matter and because Africa deserves analysts who are for Africa. Now the part of this video I have been building toward. The Pan-African implications. What happened in that South African village is not unique to South Africa. Across the continent, from rural Cameroon to northern Ghana, from eastern DRC to southern Madagascar, communities are filling the gaps that colonial and post-colonial governance structures have left wide open. In Kenya, border motorcycle networks became the de facto ambulance system in rural areas because government ambulances could not reach them. In Nigeria, communities have built boreholes, schools, and clinics through diaspora fundraising platforms like GoFundMe and local cooperative banks. In Rwanda, the Umagande Community Work Program mandatory monthly collective labor has rebuilt roads, planted forests, and constructed public buildings at a scale that government alone could never achieve. This is AfricaRising not as a slogan, but as a lived reality. It is communities refusing to be victims of their government failures. It is people operationalizing UbuntuAfrica because we are in the most practical, tangible way possible. And this is the critical but community self-help cannot be a substitute for state responsibility. When we celebrate these stories, we must be careful not to celebrate the government's failure. We must celebrate the people's strength while holding governments accountable. Because here is the danger: if governments watch their citizens build bridges and say, "Good, that saves us money," then we have not progressed. We have simply normalized abandonment. The Pan-African project, the dream of Nkrumah, of Nyerere, of Sankara, was always about building states that genuinely served their people. Not states that made their people serve themselves while politicians looted the treasury. So what does this mean for Africa's future? Here is my honest assessment. The South African villagers who built that bridge represent a generation and a continent that is done waiting. They are not waiting for the World Bank to fund a feasibility study. They are not waiting for a politician to show up 3 months before an election with a promise and a hard heart. They are acting. And that spirit, when it is channeled with education, technology, and organized political will, becomes unstoppable. South Africa goes to local government elections again in the coming cycle. Stories like this one should be voter education. Every South African watching this should be asking their ward councillor, where is our bridge? Where is our road? Where is our clinic? And if they cannot answer, vote them out. Across Africa, the infrastructure gap is enormous. The African Development Bank estimates the continent needs $130 to $170 billion in infrastructure investment annually. Community action alone cannot close that gap. But community action, combined with accountable governance, technology transfer, and Pan-African investment frameworks, absolutely can. The bridge in South Africa is a symbol. It is a symbol of what happens when government fails, but more importantly, it is a symbol of what Africans do when they decide to refuse failure. Comment below, do you think community self-built projects like this are a sign of African strength, a sign of government failure, or both? I read every comment. Let us have this conversation. Before you go, check out this next video where we break down exactly how African cities are redesigning themselves without waiting for Western development aid. The numbers will genuinely surprise you. This continent is moving and you need to be informed. Subscribe, hit the bell, and come back for the analysis that puts Africa first. Comment your thoughts below. This community is built on honest dialogue, and your perspective matters.